Yeah, the person who pioneered this model is the person I get to introduce today. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce to you Richard Paul.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. Well, I notice that many of the thoughts that Gerald has expressed interface, I think, well with what I decided to emphasize this morning. We're going to be focused in this conference on the art of teaching for intellectual engagement. And we are presupposing the importance of critical thinking in the process. But as Gerald pointed out, it's fitting and appropriate that we reflect upon our concept of critical thinking. And in order to illuminate that, from my perspective, I'm going to say a few things about the concept of critical thinking and how I think about it personally, and why I think that it has a special status in human affairs. First of all, it is the nature of critical thinking to enable us to interface with our thinking in a special way, to take our thinking, much of it buried in our subconscious habits and thoughts, and bring those habits and thoughts, those beliefs, those assumptions, those perspectives out into the open, to interface with our mind and awaken our mind to the need to study itself. In other words, it is intimately connected to, it is inseparable from effective self-reflection. And furthermore, it focuses on concepts that we cannot do without. And here I've written some remarks down, and I will read them to you and then comment on them. And I title these remarks, Concepts We Will Always Need to Assent to Truths We Must Always Live By. There are truths essential to intellectual well-being that every generation of humans must discover for themselves. And there are words essential for expressing these truths and developing their implications to higher intellectual levels. Here are two such truths about human reasoning. The first truth, whenever we reason for a purpose, within a perspective, based on assumptions, leading to implications and consequences. Here is a second truth similar to the first. Whenever we reason, we use data, facts, and experience to make inferences and judgments based on concepts and theories and attempting to answer a question, solve a problem, or resolve an issue. Now, in these two sentences, there are 16 key words. These are words we shall always have need of if we're to take intellectual command of our minds and of the conceptual tools that render our minds aware of themselves, their operations, and their intellectual health and pathology. Here are the words in a list: reason, purpose, perspective, assumption, implication, consequence, data, facts, experience, inference, judgment, concept, theory, question, problem, issue. We can graphically represent them with their verbal equivalents by means of a circle diagram that enables us to see more readily their nonlinear relationship to each other. In thinking about the structures essential to human thought and reason, we can begin anywhere in this set. Now you see the first sentence that I read off, by reading the right of the pie chart, and then if you circle up, you will see the second sentence that I wrote. Now what I'm saying about this again is these words will always be essential to human thought. There is no way for the human mind, the human intellect, to be engaged except by means of involvement with these essential and timeless concepts. And there will never be a time in which we'll say, we don't need point of view anymore. We don't have to think about that. We took care of that. We don't need to think in terms of assumptions. We don't make them anymore. Or, we're beyond human purposes. Human purposes do not matter in thinking. They used to, but they don't now. We'll never come to the point where it doesn't make sense to pose questions, to attempt to solve problems, to attempt to resolve issues. In other words, this is a timeless vocabulary that will always be relevant to critical thought because thinking cannot take place without them. Whenever we think, we do think for purposes that we have. And those purposes lead us to ask certain questions. And those questions drive us to find certain information relevant to the questions. And when we gather our information, it's of no use to us unless we interpret it and give it meaning. And when we give it meaning, we use concepts and ideas. And when we use concepts and ideas, we make assumptions. And these assumptions have implications. And we are thinking always, inevitably, within a point of view. And so I put it to you that there will never be a human time or a time in human existence where we have transcended these. These are timeless concepts. If you try to refute them, you presuppose them. So that if you said, here's my proof to show that these are no longer valuable, you would be making assumptions. You would be using ideas. You would have a point of view. And therefore, your proof would refute itself.